November the 2nd, 2022. Well, I have a bunch of kind of basically politically related things here that are kind of a little all over the place, but I think worth discussing. First, I want to mention this overall state of the campaign. I think is not too much different than in my last video, which I put out on Saturday. I think there's a few new polls coming out, some of which are positive, some of which are negative. They seem to You almost get the feeling that there's some liberal oriented polls out there trying to play down the Republican chances and some conservative related polls trying to push them up. I mean, a couple of polls come out in Nevada that seem to pull down the Laxalt numbers, and then comes another poll that pushes it back up again. So I still tend to think Laxalt has a really good chance of winning Nevada. The real risk he has there is the union movements in Las Vegas could turn out some stuff, and they may even have a few mules out there. So we'll see how that goes. And then I guess, I guess things still look fairly good for Johnson in Wisconsin. And of course, Vance versus Ryan, they had a debate on special report on Fox News. And I think, well, I actually said debate, it was like a parallel interviews with a town hall parallel interviews with an audience that was made up of presumably a third Democrats, a third Independents, and a third Republicans, or something like that. It seemed to me that Vance came off a lot better. To me, I think that Ryan is a very effective politician, but it's obvious to anybody that knows anything that he's lying. But what can I say? So at any rate, I think that characterizes a lot of the situation. By the way, if you like these videos, again, as always, a like helps out with the algorithm to get it out to people. More subscribers are really desired, and of course you can, for the subscribers, can click the bell for notifications, and you can send links to your friends if you want. And whatever, make sure you get out and vote if you haven't already. Okay, so that's kind of about the way I see the situation. Hasn't changed a lot. Maybe in some ways it's actually moving. It looks to be moving overall in our direction. It looks like even the New York governor's race is closing up, as is the one in Michigan. All these things are really close. I kind of think in the House, I think we've pretty much going to get control of the House. And the question is by what margin? As I heard the other day that they were even putting some campaign money into some highly Democrat-oriented districts. That surprises me, considering the emails I'm getting where everybody's complaining we don't have any campaign cash or can't keep whatever. You know how that goes. But so that's one of the things to look at. But the Senate's still up in the air. I think we're going to prevail there, as I say, stochastically. That is, we have like 4 or 5 chances of picking up a seat which is too close to call or within striking range, and all we have to do is just get enough of them to get to 51 seats, and we would have control. But you can't predict for sure which ones it would be. The good news on Arizona, by the way, is the Libertarian candidate has pulled out of the race and has endorsed Masters, which, given that the race was running about 2 points or so, might be just enough to pull Masters over the top, assuming the people actually vote that way. And by the way, please, people, do that, because it'd be really great to have him, I think, in the Senate. And the astronauts should go back to doing something good for our space program and space development, where I can respect his efforts, but in the Senate, he's a dud. In space, he may be a hero. You know what I mean? So that's kind of my view on that. A lot of this. So just moving on to other topics. Of course, the Paul Pelosi story continues, and there's all sorts of like conspiracy theories out there, and there's actually some real questions. But I don't know that the biggest issue, I guess, is why was the security so bad? Why didn't presumably there's fairly tight security around his house, unlike what most of our houses are. Apparently they have a sophisticated burglar alarm system, so was it not turned on? I understand there were cameras that would monitor the position that were being observed by the Capitol Police. Were they asleep at the switch? Um, we still don't know who opened the door when the police showed up. Um, there is some confusion about things, although it does look like, in general, to me, that one of them is rather nasty that's out there that Dinesh D'Souza had, which I won't repeat here, but you can find it on Twitter if you want. I like Dinesh, but I think he went a little far with that one. I don't, unless he knows something about the people that I don't know, that seems a little much. Um, More than likely, what I think is that there was a lot of there was some people kind of asleep at the switch. A crazy person went in and broke in the place, and was really a pretty incompetent at what he was doing, and allowed uh, Mr. Pelosi to make a phone call, and that caused the police to come, and he was probably trying to not sound like he was really calling the police on the guy, but why did he know the guy's name? Who knows? Maybe he said who he was. I don't know. Maybe he said, "Who are you?" And he said, "I'm David." You never know. All I know is that this is going to continue for a while, and the biggest issue I have is the disgusting way the Democrats are trying to blame it on Republicans. And it seems like that there seems to be evidence per Tucker Carlson that, in fact, all the evidence that links him to conservative movements in any form apparently was created after the incident. So in other words, that may be a fake website that liberals create after the incident to try to set this thing up as a real issue. At any rate, the guy's obviously is crazy. I mean, this is not a real act of, purposeful political terrorism. This is more like, somebody said it's more like John Hinckley than John Wilkes Booth. So anyhow, but we'll see how that goes. Another topic that'll be interesting, and which will be a bit more depressing, I think. Well, I mean, first of all, just to hit the easier part of it, I guess the Supreme Court has decided that Lindsey Graham's going to have to testify at that special grand jury in Georgia. But fortunately for him, the date will be after the election, so it won't interfere with any of his campaign activities. But the more I think troublesome for most of us here will be what I've been hearing about the plans that after the election, I guess the Attorney General and the Democrats are planning to go ahead and indict former President Trump for some kinds of charges, presumably. I don't know. These security-related charges, to me, have fallen a kind of a double issue. If this was just anybody else, of course they would be charged. But you're dealing with a former president, and you're dealing with the way they treated Hillary Clinton when she was equally had violated the security rules. And so it's another one of these things. There's one set of standards for Democrats, another set of standards for Republicans, particularly Trump. And I think that's just completely unfair. So that's one issue. The other issue is some attempt to try to blame him for inciting a January 6th riot. And I think if you could justify that, you could justify a lot of people for a lot of riots. I mean, a lot of activists on the left could similarly be charged. I think it goes against Supreme Court precedents that have been historic. Unless somebody comes up with some real evidence, I don't think anything suggests to me so far it's come up that he had a direct connection to any of the radical groups such as the Oath Keepers, the Proud Boys, or the Three Percenters, etc., that really did the incursion into the Capitol. And in fact, in my opinion, Pelosi and company may be more guilty because they ignored all the warnings and let this happen. And they may, in my opinion, they may have done it deliberately for the political purposes, in fact, that they're using it for right now in this ongoing committee. But at any rate, but the theory is that they might also try to concoct some kind of indictment based on that. So we'll have to wait and see. And of course, there's a lot of speculation what the impact of that would be. Some people think that will actually increase Trump's popularity. It'll definitely be seen by many people as being a double standard. On the other hand, and this is maybe the really part that might be important, um, indictment leads to another thing, and that's trial. And trial, if it occurs in D.C. with a D.C. jury, is going to lead to conviction, almost certainly. I mean, can you imagine a D.C. jury if they charge him with some kind of felonies, if the judge doesn't dismiss it outright? I think um, that he'd be convicted because the jury is all radical Democrats. I mean, we've seen that people are clearly guilty in the Russia hoax thing are being acquitted by these juries, even though they've been proven guilty by any objective standard. This is jury nullification. It would be at reverse for Trump. You know, it would be. So that's I guess the negative news for most people out there. And of course, if he is convicted and that comes with a sentence, I don't see exactly. I mean, is he really going to campaign for president under that condition? If you see what I mean. So that leads to some interesting issues as we would go into the campaign seasons, because presumably he'd be almost prepared to announce for president shortly after the midterms, presumably, if he was going to do it, or sometime early next year. And so the two all can coincide. And the only precedent I can think of for this was the independent candidate Lyndon LaRouche many years ago, who was in federal penitentiary and actually ran for president from the penitentiary, using his weekly phone call to phone in his political statement. Well, I don't know. It's hard to know where this is going to lead to, but there are going to be some really upset people if this happens, and I got some really happy Democrats. So it sounds to me like a very divisive step, in my opinion. So we'll just have to wait and see what Merrick Garland decides to do about this. But I thought I'd bring that up as something that is brewing on the political front, after the election. So anyhow, that's kind of it for this presentation. By the way, I will also be posting this as usual on Rumble, and of course you can subscribe to me there. And then of course the addresses of my various social media accounts are below. I do post most frequently on Twitter, and put a bunch of other things up there, and links to articles and comments I have about things. So, and I occasionally do other things on the other ones, although I also mainly use them to promote the videos. And so, at any rate, so I'll wrap this up for now, and until next time.